Estamos grabando cámara, grabando in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so you're coming from Tavistock and you have a number of years now working there, and can you introduce a little by yourself?
Okay, well, my name is Anne Hurley and I'm a consultant child and adolescent psychotherapist, and it's a great pleasure to be in Mexico and part of the conference. I think my current role at the Tavistock is really around training. So I'm involved in training, coordinating training around child psychotherapy and also adult psychotherapy. And I feel really kind of quite passionately about how do we really get psychoanalytic thinking into institutions, because I think some of the ideas in psychoanalysis make so much sense, and I want to spread the word really.
Okay, just with the psychoanalysis ideas, just to spread all the institutions, because
yes,
sometimes it's like psychoanalysis is just a part in a little room and not in all the institutions. So how is that?
Well, I think the unconscious.
Okay.
Often things happen beneath the surface of relationships, and often things happen beneath the surface of organizations. So I'm very interested in unconscious dynamics and how that they get played out in relationships, in groups, in families, and also in organizations, and indeed in the relationships between different organizations. So there's a whole kind of, if you really pay close attention, it's very interesting what happens in all of these kind of matrix of relationships.
Yeah, and we're talking a little about the Tavistock approach, and it's like 100 years. So how can it be still in?
How can it still be relevant?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, the Tavistock is almost 100 years old, and its origins really were around the aftermath of the First World War, where soldiers were coming back from battle, really presenting with very worrying symptoms.
Yeah.
And today we would be thinking about that as post-traumatic stress syndrome, but back then, there wasn't that kind of expertise and knowledge. So the Tavistock came into being to really try and understand more what was the experience of those, battle-tired soldiers and what was happening for them. Now that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And as you know, there's been a huge, kind of evolution of the Tavistock in that time. And indeed, we've also seen Euconi, who now is in existence for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And how the beginnings of that organisation has really evolved into, something that's actually quite sophisticated today.
Yeah, it looks like.
And so I think the Tavistock has had a similar kind of journey, except it's been going a bit longer. So today the Tavistock is involved in, both clinical practice, providing both general mental health input, but also a range of specialist input in its clinical work. And alongside the clinical service, there's also a training service, a Department of Education and Training. So it takes a central role in providing training, not just for professionals like doctors and nurses and psychologists and social workers, but also, for people who are actually, working in different roles, like people working in children's centres, people in schools. So it's actually trying to disseminate the expertise that we've built up about the nature of mental health and how we can be of help. To a much wider population of workers, in a number of different kinds of organisations.
Okay, what would be the core of this? Because it's something that is the core, the heart of TAVI that is disseminating in all of these institutions, school organizations, and little places, and even in the internal the practice, the private practice for all the
Yes.
students that goes there. So,
well, in a way, I don't think there's one Tavistock.
okay, so
And I think that's probably key, because I think that the Tavistock approach it really looks in great detail at particular relationships, and almost in a bespoke way, and really tries to understand the particularities of one relationship rather than adopting a one-size-fits-all.
Okay.
But I suppose there are the common, what I value most, I think, about the Tavistock approach is that it's rooted in observation. Okay, so actually a lot of people working as adult psychotherapists and as child psychotherapists would have had some history of really studying observation. Either really observing a baby in its first year, so to really understand in ordinary life, something of the development of a baby, something of the development of early relationships in a family. So that would be key. And I suppose the other area that I think is key is something about learning from experience.
Okay, that I think that's very it's wonderful, that experience, but we have to cut.
Okay.
Awesome. That's good. Okay.
So
Gracias.
we have the